Episode 3. Maura Murray. She crashed her car and walked into thin air. There is something about Maura Murray's case that gets under your skin in a way that is hard to explain. Maybe it is because she was so ordinary. Not ordinary in a diminishing way, ordinary in the way that makes you see yourself in her. She was 21 years old. She was in college. She was figuring out her life the way every 21-year-old is figuring out their life, imperfectly, messily, with equal parts confidence and confusion. She had good days and bad days. She made mistakes. She had dreams. She had people who loved her and people she loved back. She was just a girl, a completely normal, completely real young woman living a completely normal young life. And then one February night in 2004, she crashed her car on a snowy road in New Hampshire, told a passing motorist that she had already called for help, and walked into the woods. She has never been seen again to understand what happened on that road in New Hampshire. You have to understand who Maura Murray was in the days and weeks leading up to that night. Because the Maura Murray who disappeared on February 9th, 2004, was not having a normal week. Something was happening in her life. Something had shifted. And to this day, nobody fully understands what it was. Maura was a nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She was smart, disciplined, and by most accounts a high achiever who took her studies seriously. She had previously attended West Point, the United States Military Academy, before transferring to UMass. That alone tells you something about her. West Point does not accept people who are not exceptional. Maura Murray was not someone who drifted through life. She was someone who set goals and pursued them. But in the weeks before she disappeared, the people around her noticed that something was off. There had been an incident at West Point years earlier involving alcohol. There had been a car accident just days before she vanished. A minor fender bender that her father Fred had come to help her sort out. A quiet, low-key visit that people who knew them described as slightly tense. There were whispers of relationship trouble with her boyfriend. There were suggestions that she was struggling emotionally in ways she wasn't talking about openly. Then, on the afternoon of February 9th, 2004, Maura Murray sat down at a university computer and did something that has puzzled investigators and amateur sleuths ever since. She looked up driving directions to Burlington, Vermont. She looked up information about a ski resort in Stowe. She sent an email to her boyfriend saying she was going away for a few days and that she loved him. She sent an email to her nursing professor saying there had been a death in the family and she would be missing class. There had been no death in the family. She withdrew $280 from an ATM. She packed her car. She drove north. And somewhere in the process of all of that, the directions, the emails, the withdrawal, the packing, something in Maura Murray decided that she needed to get away from her life, at least for a little while. Where she was going and why she was really going there, only she knew. She never arrived. Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire is not a road you end up on by accident. It is rural and winding, and in February, it is the kind of cold that feels personal. The kind of cold that gets into your bones and reminds you how small you are. There are no streetlights. There are stretches where you can drive for miles without seeing another house or another car. It is beautiful in the way isolated places are beautiful, and it is unforgiving in the way isolated places are unforgiving Dot at approximately 1927. On February 9, 2004, Maura Murray's car, a 1996 Saturn, went off the road on Route 112 near a place called Withered Hollow and hit a snowbank. The crash was not catastrophic. The car was damaged but not destroyed. Maura was not seriously injured, at least not visibly. A passing motorist named Butch Atwood saw the crash happen. He pulled over, got out of his vehicle, and went to check on her. Maura told him she was fine. She told him she had already called a AA. She told him not to worry. Butch Atwood went home. His house was just up the road and called 911 anyway, because something about the situation didn't sit right with him. He told the dispatcher there had been an accident and a young woman needed help. Then he sat at his window and watched the car, waiting for the police to arrive. The police arrived within minutes. New Hampshire Fish and Wildlife Officer Cecil Smith was on the scene fast. Some accounts say as little as 7 minutes after Butch Atwood made that call. 7 minutes. On a cold February night on a rural New Hampshire road, help arrived in 7 minutes. Maura Murray was gone. Not gone in the sense that she had been picked up by someone and driven away, though that is one theory. Gone in the sense that she had simply vanished between the moment Butch Atwood walked away from her car and the moment Officer Smith pulled up to the scene. 7 minutes. Maybe less. She was there and then she wasn't. The car was still there. Her purse was still inside. There were wine coolers in the back seat. There were boxes and bags suggesting she had packed for a trip. There was a receipt from a liquor store she had stopped at earlier that evening. Everything that belonged to Maura Murray was in that car. Maura Murray was not. The search that followed was one of the largest in New Hampshire history. Hundreds of volunteers combed the woods around Route 112. Search dogs were brought in. Helicopters swept the area. The FBI got involved. Every inch of the surrounding terrain was examined as thoroughly as it could be in the middle of a New Hampshire winter. Nothing. Not a footprint that led anywhere conclusive. Not a piece of clothing caught on a branch. Not a single physical trace of a 21-year-old woman who had been standing at the side of a road 7 minutes before the police arrived. As the investigation deepened, the theories multiplied. Some people believed Maura had walked into the woods voluntarily, that she had been in a dark, emotional place and had made a devastating decision that night on that road. Her family has consistently and passionately rejected this theory. Her father, Fred, who has spent years publicly advocating for answers, has never believed his daughter took her own life. He has always believed something happened to her. Something was done to her. Others believe she was picked up by someone in those 7 minutes. Someone who came along that road in the dark, saw a young woman alone at the side of the road, and made a terrible decision. New Hampshire has had convicted predators in the area. There were men with histories of violence living within. Driving distance of Route 112. Whether any of them were on that road that night has never been conclusively established. There is also the question of what Maura was running from, because the emails, the withdrawal, the packed car, the false story about a family death, all of it points to a young woman who was leaving something behind. Whether that something was a broken relationship, an emotional crisis, a mistake she didn't know how to face, or something else entirely, nobody has ever been able to say for certain. People who knew her have their theories. Her family has their beliefs. But Maura herself, the only person who truly knew what was in her head, that afternoon when she sat at that university computer and started mapping a route north, has never been able to tell anyone. What has always struck people about this case, what has made it one of the most discussed unsolved disappearances of the last 20 years, is the timeline. 7 minutes. That is all the time that elapsed between Butch Atwood walking away from Maura's car and Officer Smith arriving at the scene. 7 minutes on a cold, dark rural road in February. What can happen in 7 minutes? If she walked into the woods, how far could she have gotten in 7 minutes in the snow? Far enough to evade one of the largest search operations in New Hampshire history? Far enough that trained search dogs couldn't track her? The terrain is dense and unforgiving, but the searches were thorough. The absence of any physical evidence has always felt like more than just bad luck. If someone picked her up, who was it? Who was driving on Route 112 at 7:30 on a February night, came across a crashed car and a young woman, and either offered her a ride or did something far worse? Why has no one ever come forward? In a case this high profile, with this much media attention over this many years, why has not a single person ever said, "I was on that road that night, and here is what I saw"? The silence is its own kind of answer, and it is a deeply uncomfortable one. Maura Murray would be 41 years old today. Somewhere out there is a version of her life that never happened. A graduation, a career, maybe a family of her own, all the ordinary, extraordinary things that make up a human life. Her father, Fred, has grown older, carrying the weight of not knowing. Her siblings have lived their lives in the shadow of her absence. The people who loved her have had to find a way to keep living without ever having the one thing that might give them any peace: the truth. This case has attracted more amateur investigators, more online communities, more independent researchers than almost any other disappearance in recent memory. People have driven Route 112 themselves, retracing her path. People have written books about it. Podcasts have dedicated entire seasons to it. The internet has produced every theory imaginable, some plausible, some absurd, all of them born from the same desperate need to make sense of something that has refused to make sense for over 20 years, because that is what this case does to people. It pulls you in. It makes you feel like if you just look at it from the right angle, if you just find the detail that everyone else missed, it will suddenly resolve into something comprehensible. It hasn't. Not yet. Not for anyone. Route 112 is still there. The snowbank where Maura's car came to rest is still there. Butch Atwood's house is still there. Butch himself passed away in 2018, taking with him whatever details he may have noticed that night. That never made it into his statement. And Maura Murray is still missing, a 21-year-old nursing student with $280 in her pocket and a car, packed for a trip she never explained to anyone. On a dark February road in New Hampshire, 7 minutes away from being found, we do not know what happened to her. We do not know who was on that road that night. We do not know what she was running from or where she was trying to go. We do not know if she is alive or if she is gone. We do not know if she made a choice that night or if a choice was made for her. What we know is that she was real. She was 21 years old, and she was real, and she deserved better than to become a mystery. She deserved to arrive wherever she was going. She deserved for someone to find her. We are still looking.